Back in high school, my friends and I had this secret hideout that felt like it belonged to us and no one else. It was a baseball field tucked behind the old, abandoned grade school. We always joked that one day a construction crew would tear the place apart, but that day never came, at least, not while we were kids. Part of it was probably because our town was broke, but honestly, who would want to build anything there? The field sat right on the edge of the woods, miles from the main streets, practically swallowed by nothingness. And that's exactly why we loved it. The field was untouched by the usual chaos of the town. Occasionally, a few kids would break into the school and leave graffiti, or cops might cruise by for a random check, but no one ever came to the field. It was our little sanctuary. That mattered, especially for some of my friends whose home lives were complicated. Tim, in particular, seemed to always be at odds with his mom, who'd call the cops on him for reasons I still can't wrap my head around. At the field, though none of that mattered, we'd spend long summer nights sprawled on the rusted bleachers, passing a joint, laughing, arguing, and talking about everything and nothing all at once. I loved that place. We all did. Even so, there was always this weird, uneasy vibe about it. One lone lamp post near the bleachers still worked, somehow spared from the decay around it. It threw an eerie orange glow that barely cut through the darkness. At night, especially after a few hits, I'd stare into the surrounding woods, which seemed completely alive in the shadows. I'd imagine eyes watching us, hidden, patient, and it would make my stomach knot. Eventually, someone would crack a joke or nudge me back into reality, and the fear would fade, at least for a while. I still wonder if we were ever really alone. One summer night, Johnny and I planned to meet at the field. I must have left before him because when I arrived his car wasn't there. Against the rules of our group, I decided to head to the field alone. We all like to think of ourselves as fearless, but wandering through dark woods alone wasn't really our style. Still, part of me relished the thrill. I pushed past the crumbling school and into the shadows, letting the trees swallow me as I made my way to the field. I waited, smoking, as 10 minutes slipped by, then 30. Johnny never came. The excitement drained, leaving me tense, ears straining for any sound. Eventually, I turned back, trying to shake the unease. What started as a slow walk quickly turned into a jog. Every snapping twig underfoot made me jump. I texted Johnny repeatedly, but my phone stayed silent. 10 more minutes in my car, feeling the anxiety coil tighter in my chest, and I finally gave up, driving home in a quiet panic. Morning came, and his replies never did. He hadn't answered once, not that night, not ever since. At first, I was annoyed more than anything. Johnny blowing me off wasn't totally out of character, so I shrugged it off until later that day, when my mom casually asked if I'd seen him recently. That's when the pit in my stomach formed. I started calling and texting everyone in our group, but no one knew any more than I did. The last time anyone had seen Johnny was 2 nights earlier at the field. One day passed, then another. By the end of the week, the entire town was buzzing. Flyers went up, search parties formed, and police started combing the woods. My friends and I joined a few searches ourselves, walking trails and calling his name until our voices went hoarse. We never found a trace. No clothes, no car, nothing. To this day, his body has never been recovered. Back then, I tried to convince myself he'd just run away. Johnny was always talking about leaving, traveling, seeing the world, escaping the suffocating little town. It was easy to believe that maybe he'd finally snapped and taken off. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the truth. Johnny wouldn't disappear without saying goodbye. He would have left something behind, a note, a sign, maybe tucked under the bleachers where only we would think to look. That thought ate at me. About a month later, I went back to the field. Alone, I was furious at everything. At the town, at the cops, at myself, and honestly didn't care what happened to me out there. If some animal dragged me into the woods, so be it. But as I reached the end of the path, I froze. There were people sitting on the bleachers. For a split second, I thought it was my friends, but that illusion shattered almost instantly. I had never seen these people before in my life. 3 of them sat perfectly still, stiff and silent, like mannequins posed for display. They weren't even looking at each other. But they weren't what unsettled me the most. There was a 4th one. He was moving, dancing, almost skipping around the field, grinning like he didn't have a care in the world. His happiness made my skin crawl. It wasn't natural. At the time, I told myself he had to be on something, probably rolling on Molly or whatever now. I think he was just unhinged. The worst part was that his face felt familiar, not recognizable familiar. like someone you see in a dream and wake up knowing you've met them before, but having no idea where. I couldn't place him, and that terrified me more than anything else. I didn't stick around to figure it out. I backed away slowly, heart pounding, every instinct screaming at me to run. Somehow, they didn't follow. Or if they did, I never heard them. When I reached my car, my first thought was to floor it and never look back. But instead, I circled the school parking lot. In the far back corner, half hidden by shadows, I saw a car. I recognized it immediately. Same model, same shape, Johnny's car. The moment I noticed it, the headlights flicked on. I slammed into reverse and got the hell out of there. As the summer dragged on, I couldn't shake the image of those people, or the feeling that whatever took Johnny was still out there watching. I told all of my friends about what I saw, and while they agreed it was strange, none of them seemed particularly worried. They shrugged it off, laughed it off even. Because of them, I stopped going to the field altogether. But one late July afternoon, nostalgia and sadness hit me like a punch to the gut. I found myself flipping through the old yearbook, searching for memories of Johnny, trying to feel a connection to him again. That's when I saw him, or at least someone I couldn't ignore. One of the janitors appeared in the background of a sports team photo. The moment I turned the page, my stomach dropped. It was him. The dancing man, same face, same hair, the same haunting familiarity. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I told my friends immediately, hoping someone else would make sense of it. But they were just as clueless as I was, and we didn't know what to do next. Eventually, I went to the police. I'm sure they thought I was nuts, but they claimed they ran a background check. Nothing came up. No records, no addresses, not even a trace tied to a social security number. I tried digging myself, spending hours online and in public records, but it was like the man didn't exist. He was a ghost in every sense. By the end of the summer, I returned to the field with a few friends, trying to reclaim some sense of normalcy, but the unease never left me. Every glance into the dense, dark woods sent a shiver down my spine. I longed for the sense of safety and freedom the field once gave me, but I knew it was gone forever. That place wasn't home anymore. When I left that night, I didn't look back, and I never went back again. A few days later, early in the morning at a Dunkin' Donuts, I thought I saw him. The dancing man. He looked exactly like the janitor in the yearbook photo. At first, I convinced myself it was just my imagination, a tired brain playing tricks on me. But the longer I stared, the more real it became. Then he saw me, and he smiled. My heart froze. He darted out of the store, and I followed, only to see one of his associates waiting in a car at the curb. They sped off before I could reach them, but that's when I saw it. The license plate. The same one Johnny had for Pace 2 and 7. My chest tightened. It clicked in an instant. The car wasn't just familiar, it was his. They must have repainted it, which is why I hadn't recognized it before. I beat myself up for missing it. I never saw him again. The car, the man, gone like they were never there. Now it exists only as a memory, one that haunts me more than I care to admit. I still think about Johnny, about that field, about what really happened. And I wish more than anything that I could forget it all. Rest in peace, Johnny. The image of the car speeding away at dawn stayed with me. Motion-blurred taillights, another figure barely visible in the passenger seat. The empty street glowing cold in early morning light. It was the last I saw of them. That plate number 4P7 burned into my memory forever. Eventually everything faded into memory. The field, the bleachers, the lamppost, the woods, they all waited silently watching. That place was gone from my life, haunted only by what I remembered. I never went back again. I still think about Johnny, about that field, and about what really happened. And I wish more than anything that I could forget it all. Rest in peace, Johnny. It was the summer of 2025, and my three friends, Jake, Sam, Marcus, and I were running on fumes. Our internship at the Kennedy Space Center had us drowning in rocket telemetry and simulations for weeks straight. As much as we loved space, we needed distance from screens and spreadsheets. What we really wanted was a sky untouched by light pollution. So we did what any group of astronomy nerds would do. Cross-referenced light pollution maps with Google Earth until we found a black void on the map, deep inside Tate's Hell State Forest, a vast, swamp-choked wilderness in Florida's Panhandle. The name came from an old legend about a settler named C.B. Tate who vanished there in the 1800s, supposedly cursed. We laughed it off. Ghost stories were background noise. We were chasing stars. We booked an Airbnb near Apalachicola, a small, cozy cabin about 30 miles from the forest's edge. After work that Friday, We loaded up my Tesla Model Y and Marcus's Mustang with blankets, snacks, and a telescope. No tents or camping gear since we planned to crash back at the cabin. The 7-hour drive from the space center was brutal. By the time we arrived, it was late. We dumped our bags, inhaled some food, and headed right back out. No one wanted to waste clear skies. The drive into Tate's hell was miserable. Narrow dirt paths twisted through dense pine stands and murky wetlands, the air thick with cicadas and punctuated by occasional splashes from unseen creatures in the water. Cell service vanished fast, so we relied on walkie-talkies between the cars, their static bursts slicing through the darkness. Around 20:00 a.m., we finally reached the clearing, exhausted, wired, and oddly alert. The sky stopped us cold. Stars burned overhead, sharp and overwhelming, like you could reach up and grab them. We laid out blankets, set up the telescope, and lost ourselves in the view. 15 minutes later, Sam's voice crackled through the walkie-talkie from the Mustang. "Yo, you see those headlights?" My stomach tightened instantly. We turned toward the trail we'd driven in on and spotted a faint glow creeping closer. We were 40 miles from the nearest town, deep in a massive forest at 2 in the morning. No one just passes through here. Whoever that was, they weren't lost. Jake grabbed the walkie-talkie and said, "Flash M. See what they do." I flicked the Tesla's headlights 3 sharp bursts. The glow resolved into an old pickup truck, rusted, dented, and crawling toward us like it had all the time in the world. The truck stopped about 100 yards away. No honk, no wave, no acknowledgement at all. Then we saw them. Shadowy figures stepping out of the cab, 2, maybe 3. It was hard to tell through the glare of the headlights. They didn't move. They just stood there, watching us in total silence. That's when the voices started, faint, low, slipping through the swamp like fog. Whispers we couldn't understand, but somehow knew weren't meant for us to hear clearly. "This is seriously messed up," Marcus crackled over the radio, his voice tight. Sam sounded shaken. "Those voices. Nobody's out here at 2 in the morning for anything good." I swept my flashlight toward them, but the beam died long before it reached the figures, catching only broken shadows and tree trunks. The whispering didn't stop. It lingered, soft and deliberate, crawling under my skin. Jake tried to sound calm. "Could be locals," he said, though none of us believed it. "But let's move." We all agreed over the walkie-talkies to find another clearing, setting one rule immediately. If those headlights showed up again, we were gone. Straight back to the airbeam. No debate. We veered off the main trail, knowing that if anyone followed us now, it would be intentional. We tore down a side path for nearly a mile, skidded into another clearing, and set up fast. No telescope, just blankets and raw nerves. 5 minutes in, Marcus's voice burst through the walkie-talkie, sharp and urgent. "They're back." My stomach dropped. Those same headlights tore through the darkness, much closer this time. Then the engine revved hard, loud and aggressive, like a warning shot. Sam didn't hesitate. "Get us out of here now." We dove into the cars, Jake and I into the Tesla, Marcus and Sam peeling out in the Mustang behind us. I slammed the accelerator, the Tesla bucking as roots and branches scraped underneath like something reaching up for us. In the rearview mirror, those headlights stayed locked on, high beams burning into my eyes. Jake grabbed the walkie-talkie. "Marcus, you good?" A half-second pause. Then Marcus's voice came back, strained. "Barely. They're right on us." We were 40 miles from help, 4 young interns with nothing but fear and luck. I pushed the Tesla harder than I ever had, tires screaming through mud as the Mustang fought to keep pace behind us. The trail bent sharply, and for one fleeting second, the truck's headlights disappeared. My heart leapt. I thought we'd lost them. Then the lights snapped back into view, closer than before, like they were playing with us, fully aware we had nowhere to go. We hit a fork in the trail and I jerked the wheel left, praying it led to the main road. The truck followed without hesitation. Finally, after what felt like hours of pure panic, the dirt gave way to pavement. A faded highway sign flickered into our headlights. I checked the mirror, bracing for those lights again, but the darkness behind us was empty. Marcus pulled the Mustang alongside, and we stopped on the shoulder, shaking, gasping, staring into the black forest. All that remained were crickets and the static hiss of our walkie-talkies. The drive back to the Airbnb was silent. No music, no jokes. We locked ourselves inside the cabin, but even that didn't feel safe anymore. We replayed it over and over, poachers, drug runners, locals guarding something, or maybe something tied to those old stories about Tate's hell. One thing was certain at 2 in the morning out there. Nobody was just looking for fun. The way they watched us, the way they chased us without urgency, it wasn't a prank. They wanted us scared. We never went back. We never talk about it. Not at the Space Center. Not anywhere. But on empty Florida highways at night, I know a part of me is still listening, still watching, still waiting for headlights that shouldn't be there. In December 2023, I took a 3-week vacation to Japan. My family owns a hotel near the small mountain town of Koga-Ansen, tucked away in western Japan. It's a large Japanese inn, or ryokan, built into the hillside beside the Daishui River. The area around the hotel has been inhabited for over 2 millennia and is considered sacred ground. My father had told me years ago that during the hotel's construction, workers discovered several stone blocks and pillars buried in the earth. Apparently, there had once been a shrine on the site, dating back to the 9th century. I hadn't stayed there in over 15 years, so I was eager to revisit, relive the experience, and indulge my curiosity. When I arrived in the nearby city of Kanazawa, I picked up a rental car near the train station and began the drive up to the hotel. Snow fell heavily, blanketing the roads, and traffic crawled at a crawl. What should have been an hour-long drive stretched to 2. I finally arrived around 8:00 p.m., stepping into the hotel, which was completely empty. December is the off-season here. Tourists rarely venture this far in winter. No staff were in sight, and I realized I had the entire place to myself. The isolation was almost dreamlike, unsettling in a way that made the inn feel alive with its own quiet presence. I grabbed a key from behind the counter, let myself into a suite, and collapsed into bed for the night. The next day, I ventured into the forest below the hotel. Snow reached my ankles, and trudging through rough, uneven terrain in heavy boots quickly became exhausting. I've always loved exploring, and remembering my father's story, I decided to do some off-trail hiking in the forest below the hotel. I wanted to see if I could find any remnants of the ancient ruins. Before long, I realized I had walked far enough to lose all sense of direction. I checked my phone, no signal. Trees surrounded me on all sides. Straight ahead loomed a large, rocky hill. I decided to climb it, hoping the summit would give me a better vantage point to spot any signs of civilization, or maybe the ruins my father had described. The ascent was brutal, the hillside steep and jagged. Just as I was considering how treacherous the climb was, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed what appeared to be the faint remnants of a path veering off to the left. I carefully made my way toward the path, each step deliberate. It was a narrow dirt trail that snaked upward toward the hill's summit. Dead branches and tangled brush partially blocked the way, forcing me to push through. Eventually I reached the top. That's when I realized the path simply stopped. It didn't fade or curve away, it ended. I scanned the hillside and noticed a small hollow carved into the slope above the trail, partially hidden by vines and brush. Maybe 5 meters away, I climbed up and found myself standing in front of the entrance to a small cave. Mud had washed into the opening, but it was wide enough for me to squeeze through. I pulled out my flashlight and shone it inside. The beam revealed a shallow alcove directly ahead and a second, narrower opening branching off to the left. As soon as I stepped inside, a smell hit me, thick, sour, and unmistakable. The closest comparison I could make was the scent of an animal enclosure at a zoo. The alcove in front of me was bare except for a large rectangular stone block, placed squarely in the center, like it belonged there. Moving deeper, the cave opened into a larger stone chamber. 2 side tunnels branched off from it, disappearing into darkness, but I avoided them. On the far end of the chamber stood another rectangular stone block, this one hollowed out. I approached slowly, heart pounding. When I looked inside, my breath caught. Human bones lay within. Resting among them was a long strip of rusted steel and several old bronze coins, each with a square hole in the center. I stood frozen, disbelief washing over me. Without really thinking, I reached in and picked up one of the coins. It was cold, corroded, ancient, though faint markings were still visible. Before I could inspect it further, a loud crash echoed from deep within one of the side tunnels. I snapped my flashlight toward the sound. The animal stench intensified instantly, heavy and suffocating, as if the air itself had turned poisonous. My instincts took over. I dropped the coin, grabbed the long piece of steel from the bones, and raised it in front of me with one hand, bracing myself for whatever was coming next. The beam of my flashlight revealed more of the long piece of steel. It was clearly the remnants of an old, jagged blade, rusted but deadly looking. I started backing toward the cave entrance, every nerve on edge. But the smell had changed. Beneath that choking, animal-like stench, I could detect smoke, acrid and sharp. Then I heard it, a deep, rhythmic thumping echoing from the far reaches of the tunnel. It sounded like a drum, slow and deliberate, pounding in time with my racing heart. That was the final straw. I lost control and bolted. I ran as fast as I could out of the cave, adrenaline fueling my every step. The ground seemed to quake beneath me. I could swear the entire cave vibrated with the force of something massive moving inside. I leapt from the entrance onto the snowy slope and tumbled down, snow and dirt covering me. The blade had fallen from my hands, but I didn't stop to retrieve it. I crashed through brush and broken branches, my lungs burning, my mind only focused on one thing: escape. After what felt like an eternity, I heard a car engine in the distance. Following the sound, I eventually stumbled onto the side of the road. Relief washed over me as I collapsed, shivering and exhausted. I managed to flag down a passing car. The driver hesitated at first, but after seeing the panic in my eyes, he let me in. Through conversation, I learned I had wandered nearly 4 miles from the hotel, completely lost in the snowy wilderness. Eventually, I returned to the hotel still rattled and packed up my things. I couldn't bring myself to stay another night alone in that empty building. I drove back to Kanazawa and checked into a small hotel for the night, still replaying every second of what had happened. The story doesn't end there. When the hotel reopened in February, I got a text from my father. Someone had broken in through a first-floor window. Surprisingly, nothing was stolen or damaged, except for the front door of my room, which had been smashed wide open with some kind of heavy, blunt metal object. I don't know if it had anything to do with my experience in the cave, but one thing is certain: I will never stay at that hotel again.